How many absurdities are said in this nonsensical video, but what can you expect from atheists who only rely on absurd syncretism? Let's refute the premises of this absurd video. There's no contemporary historical evidence suggesting that Nebuchadnezzar experienced a condition similar to lycanthropy or lived like a beast, as described in the book of Daniel from Nebuchadnezzar. Moreover, the Babylonian chronicles and other historical records do not mention this type of episode in Nebuchadnezzar's life. Biblical texts and primary historical evidence support the identification of Nebuchadnezzar as the king who experienced the humiliation described in Daniel 4. The Bible clearly identifies Nebuchadnezzar as the king who was humbled by God and lived like a beast. There's no historical evidence supporting the idea that this event refers to Nebuchadnezzar. The distinctions between the two kings are clear and well documented in both the Bible and external historical records. In Daniel 11, the king of the south and the king of the north are repeatedly mentioned, but in contexts covering different historical periods. The narrative suggests ongoing and changing conflicts between these two kings, which is difficult to attribute to a single political entity like Egypt. Daniel's prophecies have an apocalyptic character and span across history. The changes in the identity of the king of the south reflect the evolution of political entities that have influenced the region and God's people over the centuries. The book of Daniel covers a long historical period, and the term king of the south is used in different historical contexts. This suggests that it does not refer to a single king or entity but to a series of powers occupying a similar geopolitical position over time. Examining the specific details of the prophecies in Daniel 11, some commentators argue that not all descriptions perfectly match the history of the Ptolemaic and Seleucid kings. These discrepancies can be used to argue that the king of the south cannot be exclusively identified with the Egyptian kings. The prophet Daniel lived more than 500 years before Jesus was born. However, Jehovah revealed information to him that would make it possible to determine when Jesus would be anointed or appointed as the Messiah or Christ. Daniel was told, "You must know and understand that from the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Messiah, the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks." Daniel 9:25. Let's see how it could be known when the Messiah would appear. First, we need to determine when the time begins to be counted until his arrival. The prophecy shows that this moment is the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. When did the decree go forth? Another Bible writer, Nehemiah, recounts that this decree, that is, the order to rebuild Jerusalem's walls, was issued in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king. Nehemiah 2:1, 5-8. Various historians agree that the first full year of Artaxerxes' reign was 474 BCE. Calculating, we see that the 20th year of his reign was 455 BCE. Therefore, Daniel's messianic prophecy begins to be fulfilled in that same year, 455 BCE. Daniel indicates how long it would be from that moment until Messiah the Prince would arrive. The prophecy says that it would be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, a total of 69 weeks. How long would this period be in reality? As indicated by several versions of the Bible, these would not be ordinary weeks of 7 days but weeks of years. In other words, each week corresponds to 7 years. The ancient Jews were well acquainted with this idea of weeks of years, or groups of 7 years. For example, they celebrated a sabbatical year every 7 years, Exodus 23:10-11. Thus, the 69 weeks of the prophecy amount to 69 groups of 7 years, or a total of 483 years. Now it's just a matter of doing the math. If we count 483 years from 455 BCE, we arrive at 29 CE, precisely the year Jesus was baptized and became the Messiah. Luke 3:1-2, 21-22. Another long-reaching prophecy of utmost importance for everyone today predicted the succession of world powers symbolized by fearsome beasts that would give way to God's kingdom. Daniel narrated the following: "I was watching in my visions during the night, and 4 huge beasts were coming up out of the sea, each different from the others. The first was like a lion, and look, another beast, a second one, like a bear. After this, I kept watching in the visions of the night, and look, a fourth beast, frightening and terrifying and extraordinarily strong. As for these huge beasts, because there are 4 kings who will rise from the earth. But the holy ones of the Supreme will receive the kingdom, and they will take possession of the kingdom forever." Daniel 702:18. Jehovah gave his prophet Daniel advance information concerning the rise and fall of world powers. Between 618 and 535 BC, Daniel received from God prophecies concerning the rise of Greece as the world power to supplant Medo-Persia and concerning the role Alexander was to play in connection therewith. About 200 years before Alexander was born, Daniel had foretold the conqueror of Medo-Persia. and a mighty king will certainly stand up and rule with extensive dominion and do according to his will. And when he will have stood up, his kingdom will be broken and be divided toward the four winds of the heavens, but not to his posterity. Dan 11:3-4. This mighty king came to the throne of Macedonia at 20 years of age. In the year 336 BC, this was the same year that the king of the fourth world power, Persia, received the throne, namely, Darius III. A speedy conquest of Persia and other nations was foretold in Bible prophecies. The rise of the Macedonian or Grecian line of world rulers was foretold, for instance, at Daniel 7:6 under the symbol of a leopard with four wings of a flying creature, at Daniel 8:5 under the symbol of a he-goat that came from the sunset upon the surface of the whole earth, and it was not touching the earth. We are not left in doubt as to the identity of the he-goat, for Daniel said, "The hairy he-goat stands for the king of Greece." Dan 8:21.